Are you winning? Do you need help in your life or business? Could you use some inspiration, business strategies, and success principles? I'm Daniel Gomez, award-winning business coach, keynote speaker, and best-selling author. On the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, we will help you create a successful life and elevate your business. Together, we will discover the keys that unlock your success and dreams. Welcome back to another episode of the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, where we inspire you, we motivate you, and we educate you. And today, I'll tell you, I'm excited to bring back this amazing guest. We had her on over a year ago, and she dropped so much value that I said, we got to bring her back. And not only that, I missed her. She's an incredible human being and a great friend of mine. Amber Fuhriman, how you doing, my sister? Good to see you.
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me back. Obviously, I didn't alienate you and your audience enough the first time that I got invited back. So I must have done something right.
Yeah, I was like, Amber in the house. Woo! Amber, all the way from Las Vegas. Amber, I know it's a beautiful human being you are, but for that part of the audience that's never heard you before, do me a favor, introduce yourself to the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show.
Oh my gosh. Where do you want me to start?
Well, just give us a brief rundown and then we'll take a deeper dive. Just give us a
Brief rundown.
Hey, give me that. I got it. Give me the short bio.
The short bio, right? Awesome. So I just went into speaker mode for a minute. Do you ever do that where you go to answer a question and then you go into speaker mode and then you're like, whoa, Amber, chill the energy. Okay, cool. So I'm a recovering attorney. I'm a recovering perfectionist. I get closer and closer to being an actual recovering attorney every single day. If you could see my desk, it wouldn't look like it, but I'm closing my law firm, which is a whole story in and of itself. I grew up in a super small town and thought success was money and prestige and letters after my name and all of the things that we work so hard for. And then I got them and nothing changed. And then I had to figure out why. And that led me to the book and the mindset stuff and NLP and success coaching and all of that we're doing now. So I know that was all over the place, but pick whatever parts of that we want to go deeper into, and that's who I am.
Well, I don't think it was all over the place. I think it's you, right? That's why I love you because you're real. I wish more people nowadays were just real. There's so many flaky people out there, right? You look at a picture on Instagram and it's like, how many times has it been photoshopped? Like it's a Photoshop of a Photoshop of a Photoshop.
I ain't got time for that shit. I don't even have a filter on my mouth half the time. Why would I put one on my face?
You'd be surprised. I'll tell you what, you'd be surprised. So, ladies and gentlemen, get out your pens and paper early because I'll tell you what, this amazing woman is going to drop some massive wisdom, some massive value. You know how we always say it here in the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show. What you write down, you retain. So take notes because you're going to retain over 50% of the information that she's going to drop to you today. And I want you to go back and study your notes. And not only that, really open your heart to what she's going to say, because I think it's going to give us some great strategy, some great wisdom going into 2024 that we can apply in everyday life. And first of all, you're a recovering attorney. I've heard of recovering other things, right? But what the heck is a recovering attorney? I'm curious to understand, what is a recovering attorney?
Recovering attorney, this really came from a couple of different conversations that I had. I used to call myself a recovering perfectionist, and I don't know if we're ever actually recovering when it comes to perfectionism. I think that is one of those things that we constantly have to remind ourselves to put our unicorn back on the shelf and put it where it belongs, because they don't exist, right? I did a podcast episode with somebody a few years back when I first started podcasting, and it's still to this day one of my favorite interviews. And the reason for that is because we connected over our life experiences. If you took the things that made us who we are and we stripped our identity from it, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between us. We had a history of suicide in our family. We had lost our dads at a young age. There were other things that lined up that we just connected over. And yet this person went down a path of crime, became a drug addict. Everybody called him a fuck up. I went to school and became an attorney. And everybody looked at me and said, "You're so successful." And what they didn't know was that we were running from the same trauma. We were covering up the same things. He just chose a different drug than I did. I chose education and I chose a career, and my drug of choice was socially acceptable because it made me money and it gave me this elite status. The reasons that I went to law school were no different than the reasons that people try to cover up pain. I thought there was a moment where if I had enough success, enough money in my bank account, enough people that respected me in my profession, that the trauma in my life wouldn't hurt anymore, that I wouldn't have to deal with it. And that's not the way it works. It's not the way anything works. So at the height of my legal career, when I had my first six-figure year, I was respected in the profession. I was working at a large law firm. I had started an immigration practice for them. Everything was the way that I had imagined it to be. And I still felt empty inside. And I had to start doing the
Wait up,
work.
wait up, wait up, wait up, wait up. So when did this epiphany come to you? That's right, because
Um,
I'm listening. So listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. If you, I'm thinking like deeper, right? I'm thinking 4 years of regular school, which is college, and you got to go 4 years of
8 for me, because I screwed
yes.
around for forever, because when my dad passed away, I was the only person in my family that had ever gone to college. And everybody wants to tell you how to do something that they've never done before. So my family looked at me and said, if you drop out of school to grieve, you're never going to go back. So you can't drop out. So it took me 8 years to get a 4-year degree because I failed out of undergrad and had to work my way back.
So you went to school for 12 years.
Went to school for 12 years. Uh, yeah,
Wow.
12 years. I started in 2000. I graduated in January of 2013.
But I love this story because, ladies and gentlemen, listen to what Amber's saying. She invested 12 years into her career as a lawyer, but she still had the courage to pivot and really follow what her heart was telling her
It
to
was a
do.
journey. It was a
Let me say it
journey for
again. Somebody
sure.
needs to hear that. Because some people right now are listening to this episode and they're not happy with the way 2023 went. And we're about to transition into 2024. And maybe you're listening to this in January 24 and you're like, but you're still not happy because you're stuck in that same old job, that same old career, that same old identity that you're just tolerating because you've invested 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Talk to us about that. How did you muster the
Yeah.
courage to leave that?
Well, it started with an emotional breakdown. So, if anybody listening to this has ever thought, I just need more of X, whatever X is, more money, more time with my family, more time with my kids, whatever comes after that statement is compensation for what you don't want to deal with inside. There's zero around it, because we shouldn't need more of anything to be happy, satisfied, and fulfilled. We should want more of things that serve our purpose, but we shouldn't need it to feel whole and worthy. So if
Mhm.
there's this external result that you're tying your happiness to, whether that's time with your spouse or a career or time with your kids, whatever it is, it's no different than the next fix that a drug addict might get. It's that next dopamine that's going to make you feel okay about yourself so that you don't have to deal with the stuff that's inside. So know that you're not alone if you feel that way. I call them I'll be happy when moments. And we can only go through so many I'll be happy when moments before we realize that we're the common denominator in those moments not delivering what they're supposed to. And
Wow.
for me, the moment that I realized I had a problem was March of 2016. And I remember it vividly, because it's the day that I decided to take control of my life. However, I say that now, it's easy to say that now, 10 years later, when I look back at what I've created. Then it felt like survival. It felt like every single breath that I took in was a breath that I was physically forcing my body to take. Um, I had become incredibly manipulative, and I had become incredibly controlling, and I didn't know it. And it wasn't out of any maliciousness. It wasn't out of any desire to hurt anybody. It was out of feeling so out of control in my life that I needed something to feel like I had control over, and that ended up being the people in my life. So I would start fights just to feel like I could fix them. I would like just stuff that we all
So
know
you were
from
drama.
relationships all day long. Um,
So wait up, let's slow down real quick.
hold on. Let me answer your question and then I'll go back because I don't want to end on the fact that I was a hot mess.
Well, you're not a hot mess.
Um, I got sent to Reno for court, and Reno is about 8 hours away from Vegas. And something happened and I couldn't control it. And the only thing that I was left to was my own devices. I talk about it at length in my book, so it's not something that I don't share publicly. I was in a relationship and that person needed a break. And um, if I was in Vegas, I would have literally hunted them down to feel like I was in control of whether we talked or not. But when you're 8 hours away and they won't answer the phone, what are you supposed to do? The only thing that you're left with is the realization that your entire existence depends on somebody else playing your game. And for 4 days, I sat in a hotel room in Vegas or in Reno and I hyperventilated and I tried to get myself to breathe. But I'm a good attorney. And so I would pull myself together to go take care of everybody else. I would pull myself together to go to court. I would pull myself together to do my job. So for any of you that's listening that has ever pulled yourself together to take care of your kids, that has ever felt like you're a mom that can't not be okay because you've got people relying on you, I know what that feels like. So I would go to court and I would do what I needed to do. And then I would come back. And as soon as it was all about me again, I was a mess. I wasn't eating. I wasn't sleeping. I was barely breathing. And my family had been telling me for years that I needed to talk to somebody, and I thought that they were out of their damn minds until I spent 4 days trying to convince myself to breathe, and that was the first time that I reached out and asked for help. Okay, now we can break because they know that I'm not a hot mess.
Was that hard for you? I mean,
I mean, then or now?
I'm listening to what you're saying, and I thank you for opening your heart, first of all, because I know sometimes it's not an easy thing to talk about. It's just to be totally transparent the way you are. But I think there's just people listening right now that 2023 was a hot mess. And the reason it was a hot mess is because they're a hot mess. And some people have blinders on and they don't see that, right? They're
So
blaming
many.
everybody else. They're blaming the economy. They're still blaming COVID. They're blaming their ex-wife. They're blaming their kids. They're blaming whatever it is. But the fact is, their life is a hot mess because they're a hot mess.
Yeah. And I use that term lovingly. Since 2016 to now, it has been a lot of hard work. I started with 2 years of therapy. During those 2 years of therapy, I also started obstacle course racing. I got involved in fitness. I started physically pushing my body. Then I opened my first business in 2017. In 2018, I started learning human behavior. I started learning that for the purposes of sales and business. Each thing I learned about human behavior, though, taught me something about myself. And each time I learned something about myself, I healed a little bit. And, we're onions and there's different levels of healing that we get to do throughout our life. I hate to tell you, there's never this destination where somebody just like looks at you and says, okay, you are now healed, right? It
Yeah.
is a lifetime journey of growth. And one of my very, very favorite quotes ever, and I don't remember where I saw it and I don't remember who said it. It was 3-4 years ago-ish. And I was scrolling through social media and it said, people think that personal development is the book. They think that personal development is the podcast. They think that personal development is the conference. Personal development is awful. It's the tears, it's the sweat, it's the internal struggle, it's the honesty, it's the communication. It's the stuff that we try to cover up with the books, the podcasts, and the conferences, right? It's the stuff that we try to convince the world that we're okay. And my dad died in 2001. And from 2001 until 2016, I spent 15 years trying to convince everybody in my life I was okay, including myself, because I wasn't fooling anybody. They all knew. But I thought that I had them all fooled. And in 2016, I just couldn't hide it anymore.
So maybe you're listening to Amber speak right now and you're asking yourself, ask this question, be honest with yourself. What am I not dealing with in my life? What am I not dealing with in my life that I need to? What
It
am
is
I not?
a
I think even a better question to ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, is what are you not being honest with to yourself? Forget everybody else, right? Forget the boss, forget your business, forget your clients. What are you not being honest with yourself? And I think sometimes that's a hard question. So let me ask you this, Amber, because you have a lot of wisdom. Somebody's listening to us talk about this and they're kind of like, okay, I'm trying to get the flow of this episode to see what Amber's saying. But now they're thinking to themselves, oh crap, my 2023 is the one that was a hot mess. What are one or two steps, maybe even three steps that someone can take to start to reflect back and say, okay, well, maybe 2023 wasn't the year's fault. It was me not taking responsibility or not being honest with myself. How does someone start peeling back the onions if they've never done that or they've never really been honest with themselves to deal with something like that? What are some steps they can take?
Before I answer this question, I'm going to say everything I'm about to say is a hell of a lot easier to say than it is to do. So for you that are listening, please know that the only reason that I know how powerful these steps are is because I took them. And because I took them, I know how much it takes. And you're not alone. So first of all, the first thing that I think we all have to do is acknowledge that everybody, ourselves, the people in our lives, our friends, our family, our coworkers, our boss, everybody, we're doing the best that we can with the tools, the knowledge, and the resources that we have. And because of that, the mistakes that may have been made, the decisions that may have been made, are not a reason to beat yourself up. They're not a reason to make decisions about your character. They're a reason to say that every behavior has a purpose, and whatever decisions and choices were made served a purpose for you at the time. Those behaviors will continue unless we are willing to acknowledge the purpose that they served. So it might be protection. It might be, it's a lot of times protection. We might be afraid of what's going to come. We might have an identity that we have portrayed to ourselves and to the world about who we are, and we're afraid of losing that identity because who are we without it? All of these things are things that I've thought. So before you can do anything, you have to be willing to acknowledge that you are not your behaviors, you are not your choices, that your validity as a human being, your worth as a human being is separate from your choices. I used to say, before I knew anything about human behavior, people used to ask me how I could be a criminal defense attorney, and I used to tell them that good people make bad choices all day long. And I never listened to my own advice, because I could look at a client of mine and say, you're a good person that just made really bad choices. And their bad choices got them put in jail. My bad choices never got me put in jail. But I also didn't take my own advice because I was a bad person for making those bad choices. And then I would beat myself up, right? So be willing to give yourself the grace that you give other people is kind of the moral of that. And then have a real heart to heart with yourself. Get honest. I have a resource that's available, and if you go to my website, you can actually download a workbook. It's called Creating Your Success Blueprint. And the first exercise that's in that is an exercise that I start every single conversation with a client off with. And I refer to it as a life will exercise. And it is an opportunity for you to look at the 9 major areas of your life: spirituality, health, fitness, career, money, relationships, environment. There's 9 different areas, and rate them from 0 to 10. And this is why work-life balance doesn't exist, because you cannot take a human being and put them into one bucket that is work and one bucket that is life. We don't work that way. But as humans, we are incredibly good at convincing ourselves that something else other than us is the problem. So step back for a second and tell me if this story resonates with you. Have you ever known the person that has said, I have dedicated so much time to building my life and something just feels like it's missing. I know that it can't be my job because I put so much time and effort into my job. So maybe my spouse and I were just not working anymore. So they leave their relationship. Now they're single and they're still unhappy. And they say, but wait a minute. If it wasn't my spouse, then maybe it is my job. And so now they quit their job and they're still unhappy. So now they're single, jobless, and they're like, well, maybe I just need a reboot. Maybe I just need to hit the reset button on my life. So I'm just going to go move. I'm going to go live somewhere else. Now they sell their house, they buy an RV, they go out, they live on the road, and they're still unhappy. Something's still missing. How many things do we have to blame it on before we're willing to acknowledge that the common denominator in all of those things is us, and that we cannot outrun our lack of confidence, self-worth, and belief in ourselves with relationships and stuff? At some point in time, we get to do the work internally to heal the choices that we've made that dictate what we deserve to have, because our belief about what we deserve will dictate how much money we allow ourselves to make, what relationships we allow ourselves to get in, what jobs we allow ourselves to keep. We are emotional beings that pretend to make decisions logically. And if we don't think we're worth it, then we are never going to allow ourselves to have it. So if you want to have the life, the business, the relationships, the career that you've always wanted, you've got to believe that you deserve it first. And that requires some serious, serious self-work.
Are you an aspiring speaker? Do you have a book that you've been wanting to write for months, maybe even years? Or are you an aspiring podcaster? You want to start that podcast like the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show and don't know where to start? Well, at Daniel Gomez Enterprises, we can help you do all 3. We can help you become that paid speaker, share your story to the world, write your book, and get your podcast launched and help you produce it. We'd love to help you. Give us a call at 210-663-5954. That's 210-663-5954. We can help you become that paid speaker, write that book, and launch your podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Give us a call now. So ladies and gentlemen, write this down. What do you not believe that you're worth having? What do you believe you don't deserve? You know, what comes to mind is we make the mistake so many times, ladies and gentlemen, that we go to school, we get all this skill set, we got all this knowledge, we get not 1 MBA, but 2 MBAs, and then we still can't succeed. We're still broke. We're still living paycheck to paycheck. We're still not happily. And then we blame everybody else. Write this down, ladies and gentlemen. We don't rise to our level of education. We fall to what we believe we deserve, like Amber's saying. Let me say that again. We don't rise to our level of education. We fall to the level that we believe we deserve. Because you're never going to have, what I just heard you say, Amber, is we're never going to have what we don't believe we deserve.
Never.
And so many
And
people blame everybody else, but I talk about this when we have our Millionaire Mind Bootcamp, right? It's a poor self-image. If you have a poor self-image of yourself, which many people don't realize that they do have a poor self-image of themselves, and then they self-sabotage themselves. A great example that comes to mind as we're talking, and I want you to elaborate on this, is we'll just say Amber, right? Amber's an attorney, she crushes it, and just she goes out there, says, you know what, I'm doing great. I've always wanted a black Mercedes because lawyers have black Mercedes. She goes and buys this new black Mercedes. Then all of a sudden she buys it. A week later, she goes and she wrecks it. And part of that is because after you settle in that, you're like, well, should I have bought it? I don't really need it. We try to reason with us. So, ladies and gentlemen, listen to what we're talking about, right? Maybe you've bought that new truck, you've bought that new car, that new sports car. I don't need it. You try to self-sabotage. You try to return it, but it's too late because you've already signed a contract. Talk to us about that, Amber.
yeah, there's a great book that I reference a lot because he describes it better than I think anybody else, simpler than anybody else. We go deep in my trainings in the science behind all of this and why what we're saying is scientifically and sociologically and psychologically studied for years and years. However, there's a book by John Levy. It's called You're Invited, and it's about creating community, creating people who not just want to be your clients and your customers, but want to be your people, your community, and how to nurture that. And he starts off this book by talking about very similar things that we're talking about now. What goes on in our mind, between our conscious mind and our unconscious mind. And he describes it as an elephant and a rider. So if you've never heard the terms conscious mind and unconscious mind, the 10 million foot overview is that your conscious mind is about 10% of what goes on inside your head. And it's arrogant enough to believe that it makes 100% of your decisions. Your unconscious mind is the other 90%, the underneath the iceberg, what we can't see. It's the decisions that we've made, the beliefs that we've stored, the trauma that we have. It's also the part that makes sure that everything in our body, runs the way that it's supposed to. It's also where our reticular activating system lives. And our reticular activating system is the filter that takes in all of the things that we're experiencing every single day and brings that they come in our senses. And then in order to not implode, we have to decide what we're going to focus on, what we're going to capture, what we're going to remember. This is why you can line up 10 people, show them the same event, and they will give you 10 different answers about what happened, because everybody's reticulating activating system remembers different information because we've trained it to remember different information. That also lives in your unconscious mind. This is where the power of manifestation and the law of attraction comes from. You attract what you think about. Your focus goes, your energy goes where your focus flows. And if you've ever, sticking on your car example, if you've ever thought, I want to have a car that nobody else drives. So you go to the lot, you pick out this car that you've never seen on the road before, you buy it, you probably pay more for it than you needed to because you really wanted it and you told the salesman that. And then you get off the lot and you go to the stoplight, you look to your right, you look to your left, and there's one of each on each side. Are you a trendsetter, or had you just never told your brain that it was important to focus on them before? Right? So now all of a sudden your brain has said, oh, I just bought a Forerunner. Your brain's saying, oh, Amber just told me that Forerunners are important. Let me show her all the Forerunners that exist, and they're everywhere. It's not that more Forerunners are in the world than we thought before. It's that we have told our brain that it's important to remember that information and present it to our conscious mind. So with that 10 million foot overview, that's about 8 days of training. In my training, we go deep, 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 deep into these concepts. The way John Levy describes it is he describes your conscious mind as a rider and your unconscious mind as an elephant. So imagine whether it's been at a circus or a safari, or whether it's been a YouTube video, anytime that you have watched an elephant with a man on that elephant and they're going in a direction. Who's deciding the direction? Is it the elephant, the unconscious mind? Or is it the man, the conscious mind? And if the man, the conscious mind, is arrogant enough to believe that he has any chance of controlling where a 2-ton elephant goes, he's out of his mind. If that elephant doesn't want to go where that rider wants to go, they ain't going to end up there. So if you look at somebody and you say, I want to have $1 million business in 2024, and they say, cool, these are the action steps that you need to take. $1 million isn't that much money. I know there's a lot of people that just shit their pants when I said $1 million wasn't that much money, but it's not that much money. There's people out there that make a ton more money than $1 million a year. If they can do it, so can you. Well, what happens is you go meet with somebody and they say, if you want to make $1 million, here's your action plan to do it. Let's take a look at the products and services. How much do you sell them for? How many do you need to sell? How many sales calls do you need to make? Here's your action plan. Then you sit down at your computer and you go to write emails and you go to make calls, and your unconscious mind says, but wait a minute. Mom made $300,000 when I was 6 and dad left. So money ruins relationships. So I can't let her have this money, because if I let her have this money, then my relationships are going to fail, and then she's going to be alone. So now I don't have time, and now I've got admin work to do, and now I need to go networking, and whatever distractions come up. This is a perfect example of the way our conscious mind and our unconscious mind work together. We say we want something, and we very well might. And then our unconscious mind and all of the programs and all of the decisions and all of the beliefs that we have carried on throughout our entire life start to turn into that elephant that says, there's no damn way we're going there. I know what's on the other side of that because I've seen it.
So what you're saying, so what is it? That's good, because would you say that your mom was making 300,000 a year, and maybe you're that daughter, that son that saw the mom have a successful career, but maybe there was a lot of pain in that father, I mean, in that relationship with as a kid, right?
Yeah. I mean, and it's never bad. Like, it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
bad. And this is why when people say, I don't have any trauma because I had a good childhood, I just laugh, because our unconscious mind, like, it doesn't even need to be bad. One of my favorite stories I borrow from my coach, who in one of her training classes, she had a student who was a real estate agent and could not get above the income ceiling that they had set for themselves with their real estate agent, and or in their real estate business. And she was saying, let's talk about what it was like in your childhood. And she says, I'm not here to talk about my childhood, I'm here to talk about how to make more money. And she's like, well, I hate to tell you this, but one and the other are tied together. And she refused and she refused. And in conversation one day, this real estate agent says, damn it, all I want to do is play with the big boys. And my coach steps back and says, wait a minute, how many brothers did you have? She's like, I never told you I had any brothers. She's like, you just did. How many brothers did you have? And she's like, I can tell you exactly what happened. At some point in time, you were a little kid. You were running around in little kid diaper butt. You had 2, 3 older brothers. They were going to go outside and play. You were going to follow them because you wanted to go with them. Mom grabbed you and said, don't play with the big boys. You're going to get hurt. Then you went in to a career that you identify as a male-dominated career, and you took that home life and you projected that to your business. And now your unconscious mind says, wait a minute, you can't play with the big boys, you're going to get hurt. So let's stay small and only sell 3 or 4 houses a year.
Mm.
It's not even somebody saying, my mom tried to hurt me, my mom did this, it's none of that. It can be the most innocent comment that's made, and our unconscious mind takes that and then runs with it for the rest of our life. And when we get to shift the way that we perceive that event, and we get to change the way that we look at our career, then all of a sudden we get to change our results. That particular real estate agent went from doing 3 transactions a year to being the number 3 or number 4 real estate agent in California within a 12-month period. All because that belief got shifted, and all of a sudden her unconscious mind said, oh, wait a minute, it's safe, right? We can go, we can do this.
Yeah.
To sum all this up, one of my favorite quotes is, don't give up your peace because chaos is comfortable. Our unconscious mind doesn't know what exists on the other side of what we don't know. So you could be living in this cesspool of bullshit. You could be broke. You could be in a horrible relationship. You could be living a life that you wish you could escape from. And on the other side of your comfort zone, on the other side of this door that you just have to open, there is this beautiful life waiting for you. And the closer you get to that, your unconscious mind says, I really don't like where I am right now, but I know it. I don't know what that is. I don't know whether it's going to be better. And I don't know whether I'm willing to make that choice. So if you think at any point in time in your life where you've made a drastic decision, it has normally come because one of two things happened. Either something really, 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 really good pulled you out of your comfort zone, or something really, 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 really bad pushed you out of it, like hyperventilating for 4 days in a hotel room.
I love what we're talking about. So ask yourselves this, ladies and gentlemen, write this down. What meanings have I given some moments in my life? Maybe you've given them the wrong meanings. And since you gave it the wrong meanings, the results you're getting, you're that struggling account executive. You're that struggling business owner because you gave an event in your life the wrong meaning. And now you might not even realize it, like Amber's saying.
And it doesn't even need to be the wrong meaning. It's the meaning that served you at the time, right? Whether there's a right meaning or a wrong meaning, it's the meaning that protected you or served your purpose at the time. And we get to acknowledge that it no longer does. That what we perceived that event to mean then no longer, like, it may have gotten us to where we are now in our life, but it's not going to take us to where we want to go in the future. Another thing that I would highly suggest people do, and this is, I'm going to give you 2 golden nuggets that I live my life by. We are, if you can think of anybody in your life that you look at and your skin crawls, you look at and your blood boils, and you think, my God, like that person, if I ever turn into that person. Well, I hate to tell you this, but that person is the deepest mirror of the things that you dislike about yourself. So whenever we're telling somebody who says, well, this person did this, or my mom did this, or my dad did this, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
their behavior may be their behavior. I'm not saying they're not an asshole. What I am saying is that you wouldn't feel the way that you do about it unless something about their behavior resonated with you in some way. Maybe you haven't shown up for yourself or for your family, and then somebody schedules dinner with you, a networking dinner, and they blow you off. And you're like, how could you be so irresponsible to not show up for a business meeting? Well, what you're doing is saying, I'm really mad you didn't come for the business meeting, but what you're feeling is, when have I not shown up for the things that I've said in my life? And how much do I dislike that behavior? So the first question is, anytime you get emotionally triggered by anything, anytime that you have an emotional reaction to an event that's external to you, ask yourself, what about this is about me? And listen to the answers that you get. And be prepared to
Okay, so you know what?
hear.
I want to ask you this. I want your insight in this because something just came to mind. So,
Yeah.
so we have events, and we sometimes people can't afford to pay the whole thing, so we do a payment plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we send them their invoice. Okay, I mean, it's kind of like when you do. Okay, great. Today is the 16th, so on the 16th of every month, Amber, your payment's going to come out. You know that. I mean, we've already had 2 or 3 payments come out, and all of a sudden, Thanksgiving gets here and the payment comes out. Customer says, well, why did you take out the payment? Like it's set up to come out that day automatically. What's the cause of something like that? Is
Well, it
that what we're talking
depends.
about?
I mean, we could be, but what we're talking about isn't the cause of them not making the payment. It's the cause of you being pissed that they didn't make the payment. So
No,
if
it's
you want to
no,
go,
no. They like, right? So you make the payment,
Yeah.
They get upset because you withdrew the money for the payment, is what I'm saying.
So I can't speak to their behavior because I mean, it could be anything. Um, if you feel a certain way about that behavior, then the question becomes, why does that bother you? What about that is about you? What about, and I know you just figured it out by the way that your head nod and your mouth moved, right?
What?
There's something, if I had to mind read, there is something in your life where in the past you felt like you didn't pay enough attention or you were irresponsible. And every time somebody doesn't pay their invoice or anytime they automatically get drawn out and then they complain to you, what you feel on an internal level is a reminder of the times in your life where you didn't pay attention to something, or you were irresponsible, or you didn't follow through on something. Welcome to human behavior. So the first question that anybody can ask themselves is, what about this is about me? And I can tell you that
Say that again. Say that again. Say that a little bit slower. That was good.
what about this is about me?
That's a good question to ask yourself.
And I can tell you that in the book, Break Your Bullshit Box, I go deep into this conversation because my mom is one of the deepest mirrors of me, and I hated her for a long
Show
time.
us your book. Is it on Amazon, or where can we get your book?
It is. It's called Break Your Bullshit Box. And if you haven't figured out by now, it's about excuses in human behavior and how we get to get rid of our excuses in order to have the level of success that we want. And it is on Amazon. So the second thing, what about this is about me? And the second thing is, anytime you hear yourself making an excuse, I can't do that. I'm not the type of person that does this. I can't, I won't, I shouldn't. Anything that affects your behavior, I want you to ask yourself, when did I decide that? And I want you to listen. And the very first thing that I need to preface this by, so I'm giving kind of tools that a lot of people may not have the resources to truly be entirely empowered by. However, if you are patient with them, they will make a huge difference in your life and business. You have that voice in your head. We have trained ourselves to ignore that voice in our head for so long. And the questions that I'm telling you to ask yourself right now are questions that cause you to check in and listen to that voice in your head. And I can guarantee you that it is not going to make sense. So when you say, when did I decide that? And the number 4 pops in your head. And you're like, well, I don't understand. Like, what happened at the age of 4 that made me decide that people aren't reliable and they don't follow through? And this is where the reprogramming comes in. And you cannot reprogram your mind alone. You can't be part of the solution if you're part of the problem, because you see everything within the boundaries of this box. What you can do, though, is check yourself. And what about this is about me checks yourself. It goes internal. It says, what am I really pissed about? What am I really upset about? Because if none of this was about me, then I would just say, hey, this guy didn't show up for dinner, and I would go on about my day. I wouldn't say, damn it, why did I even schedule this appointment with somebody? They never follow through. That emotional interaction, that emotional response means that there's something about that interaction that you don't like about yourself.
Now,
And then
now we're talking about this, what I do is, right? Because before, I've learned not to take things personal. And I think of
have you though? Or have you
I,
just put a shield up?
no, I think of the 4 agreements, right? I think sometimes
Yeah.
people personally do things to us and they don't, right? They're just maybe
Yeah.
going through for all we know, maybe it's the first Thanksgiving and they lost a loved one and they're depressed or whatever it may be. And so don't take it personal. And we assume they purposely did it, and maybe they didn't.
Yeah.
And I think that's helped me so much is A, don't take things personal, and B, don't assume, because we assume that people are ignoring us because they're not answering our phone call. No, maybe they're busy taking their 3-year-old a shower, or bad because it's that time of the night or whatever.
And isn't the better question not why aren't they answering their phone? Isn't the better question, why is it so important to me that they do? What's the purpose of me tying my validation to them answering the phone call? right?
We're going deep here, Amber. It's just some good
I
stuff.
know. I'm telling you, this is what I love so much. And this is why I started training this science, because it changed my life. You know, going through trying to be a better business owner, being a better salesperson, being a better communicator. And all of a sudden, I have better relationships with my mom and my family and myself. And I'm accomplishing things that I never thought possible.
Wow. I love
We
this.
get to reprogram our mind in order to make that happen. In order to do it, though, it requires patience. So the
So,
two
so,
questions that I gave you will let you tap into starting to become aware, and you cannot change it alone. You can't. You need a coach that's trained in NLP. You need to go through an NLP training. You need to do something where there is intentional reprogramming of your beliefs and your behaviors in order to actually change the behavior and the belief. The questions that I gave you, though, will start to bring awareness to the things that you've been ignoring your whole life.
and recap those two questions real quick.
What about this is about me? And when did I decide that?
It just makes me think of how I think about a lot about the kids, right? The youth, and I see the pain in them. Just
Mm-hmm.
they're lost. And what I mean by that is there's so many blended families in America, and they don't realize that when people get divorced, that it's the kids that suffer. And the kids,
Sometimes when people stay together, it's the kids that suffer too, though.
yeah. But I'm just
I
saying,
mean,
when you get two different households, I've seen it
mm-hmm,
when you get blended families and you get two children that are just dominant and real active, and
mm-hmm,
mom says, well, can I just be happy for one time, Ricky? And Ricky didn't do nothing wrong. He's just being Ricky,
mm-hmm.
right? And Ricky's fighting with Johnny, and then Ricky dims his light, and now he lost his self-confidence, and he goes through life because he just wants his mom to be happy, and he just
Yeah.
kind of lost his edge.
And now he's decided at whatever age that was that his presence makes people unhappy. And then as an adult, he's never the one that makes the phone call. He's never the one that invites people over. He's always the one that's down to go hang out when people invite him, but he'll never be the one to initiate contact because he needs to be invited because his presence makes people unhappy. That's how quickly decisions get landed in our brain.
I need to go to one of your trainings.
I've told you that for 2 years. January and February, get your ass to Vegas.
How long are they? How long are the trainings? 2 days or 3 days? How long are they?
4 days. So it's 8 days broken into 2 weekends.
8 days broken into 2 weekends.
Yeah.
So I spent 2 weekends with you,
2 whole weekends.
back to back.
So the January and February one, there's a break for Podfest. So
Okay.
it's the weekend before Podfest. Then I fly to Orlando for Podfest, and then I come back and do it the next week. So there's 1 week in between.
Ladies and
So just
gentlemen,
book some speaking engagements.
yeah, you
Stick
need
in
to get it.
Vegas, work for a little bit, hang out.
But this is good stuff because we think about, right. We wonder why we make the decisions that we make, and what I'm hearing from all this, ladies and gentlemen, is we need to think more for ourselves. I think we don't really think for ourselves, and what I mean by that is, ladies and gentlemen, ask yourself, write this down. When's the last time I really asked myself deep questions? Or better yet, when's the last time you really asked yourself a question? Because we're not we're not taught in school how to think for ourselves. We're never asked questions. We're always, right. A teacher teaches us where they're kind of just talking to us, and when they never ask us to say, "Okay, think for yourself, Amber." And I think this makes you think for yourself. And I would say, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but most adults don't know how to think for themselves or how to ask themselves the right questions.
They don't know how to ask themselves the right questions, but more than that, they don't know how to listen to the answers. So when they do ask themselves the right question and they get the answer, they start to analyze the answer instead of believing it. The biggest thing that I have to tell my clients when I start to do any type of emotion-based work with them or any type of reprogramming work with them is the answers that you're going to give me aren't going to make sense. Turn off your brain and tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. When I first did, we have a modality in our trainings where we take people back to the first time that they've experienced the major emotions like anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt. And we allow them to learn different lessons from that event that they tied to anger. Maybe they look at that event and they realize that they were self-sufficient and powerful, and whatever lessons their unconscious mind needs to learn. And as we start to decide when the first time is that people have experienced these major emotions, there's a question that we ask, and it's whether the very first event was before, during, or after their birth. And I remember, as somebody who didn't believe in multiple lifetimes, that this question was stupid to me. I was like, of course it's after their birth. Like, what the hell? Who experiences anger during birth? And even if there's different lifetimes, like, who remembers that? And so I'm working with somebody for the very first time as I'm getting my certification. And the person that I'm working with is telling me that the first time that they ever experienced anger was like 250 years ago on a pirate ship, and like somebody stole one of their, like, they were telling me this whole story, and I called bullshit. And so I go to my trainer and I said, listen, is this real? And she says, does it matter? And I said, yes, it matters. Like, I'm an attorney. I need the evidence. I need the facts. I need to connect them. It needs to matter. And she says, if they believe that it's real, then it's dictating every decision that they make. It doesn't matter whether you buy it or not. And that applies to us too. I've done these modalities with people doing them on me, and I've been surprised what's come out of my mouth 3 generations ago, 2 lifetimes ago. And I could either say, that's bullshit, it's made up, doesn't matter. Or I could say I'm willing to trust the process in order to get the change. And I can tell you that trusting the process has provided so much transformation in my life. And so as you start to ask yourself these questions, and as you start to listen to that voice in your head, when it tells you something, believe it. Because we don't get any growth by challenging what our unconscious mind believes is true.
How does somebody get a hold of you?
The best way is to go to my website, successdevelopmentsolutions.com. I have a couple of different things that are super, super exciting that are coming out. First of all, the book is out. So you can go to Amazon, type in Break Your Bullshit Box. I wish I would have known this when I published the book. You've got to put the asterisk in there in order for it to find it. But you can search by my name, Amber Fuhriman. The other thing is, while I truly believe that the best way for somebody to get massive transformation in their life is to come to a training, I also realize that it's not quite in everybody's financial or schedule abilities to fly to Vegas and stay here for 8 days. So I have a course that's coming out. We're launching it in January, where we're going to talk about some of these concepts. So if anything that I've said resonates with you and you're saying that's great, and I'm not in a position to fly to Vegas for an 8-day training, then let's talk about whether the course makes sense to you. There's less transformation in it than there is in an in-person training. However, the knowledge, the information, and the resources are there.
Wow. So last but not least, what's a scripture or a quote that you rely on in times of adversity? A scripture or a quote that Amber
Okay.
relies on?
There's a couple. I'm gonna go with, and I growled because I love this question so much, but it's so hard to choose just one. Brene Brown has a special place in my heart, because when I was in my meltdown, it was her TED Talks that would pull me out of anxiety attacks and panic attacks. And I remember, if you go and listen to her first TED Talk, The Power of Vulnerability, she talks about deciding whether or not she was going to post this TED Talk or be willing to post it. And she says, if courage is a value that I hold, then this is an action I have to take. And there are a lot of times in my life where I have been up against a decision that I didn't want to make, where I would have liked to stay small, a podcast I didn't want to release, an interview that I didn't want to go super deep into, a book that I didn't want to write. And it would have been really, really easy for me to stay small. And if courage is a value that I hold, then living my life to its absolute fullest and impacting as many lives as I can is a non-negotiable for me.
Wow. I love you. This is a
Love
great
you
time
too.
together. It was a good lot of great wisdom. And ladies and gentlemen, so much wisdom was dropped, right? Asm definitely, Amber opened up her heart to you. And I go back and just think about what we talked about. And it's just, you got to ask yourself questions, ladies and gentlemen. Your mind, your heart, your being knows the answers. You just got to ask yourself to prompt it to surface. And then when it surfaces, don't question it. Just kind of go a little bit deeper within yourself. And I would encourage everyone to go back and listen to this episode again and really study your notes as the notes you wrote down. Study them to understand what's going on inside of me, you, the listener at a deeper level. And thank you for tuning in today, because we wouldn't have one of the top podcasts in the world without you. And man, Amber, just thank you again. This is just it's been a good episode. Really, really good. I'm gonna go back and listen to this one myself. After we
Thank
edit
you
it
so
out,
much for having me. I appreciate it.
yeah, and we'll put your information in the show notes. So, ladies and gentlemen, anybody who wants to get in contact with Amber, please, we'll put her information there. And behind me here, you see Sticker Shock Speaking Academy. It's coming up March 8th and 9th, 2024. Now we're international. Now we're the premier speaking academy. We've had people come in from all over the world, and I'm just excited. We got our first couple coming in from England. So it's going to be just the next level. And if you have a story, if you want to grow your business, people that speak grow their revenue over 50%. So Amber's not in your head. Yep. So if you want to grow your
I
business,
sure am.
come and learn how to speak with us at the Sticker Shock Speaking Academy. Give me a call at 210-663-5954. I would love to see you on stage at Sticker Shock, the premier speaking academy of the world. Until next week with another amazing guest. And once again, thank you, Amber. We'll see you here on the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. This is Daniel Gomez Inspires, and thank you for listening to our show today. Please share this episode with a friend, leave us a review, and subscribe to our show. And for listening to our show today, I want to give you a free gift. I want to invite you to our Millionaire Mind community. Text the word millionaire, that's millionaire, to 210-942-5059. Yes, join our community today and receive millionaire affirmations, inspirational quotes on a weekly basis. That's 210-942-5059. Text the word millionaire today and join our community. And once again, thank you for listening to our show.